Yeah, thank you, Eric and Kerry. Thank you. Uh, Let me throw one question in, and then we'll go back to other commission members as well. So, Kerry, I believe in the I don't know to bring it up on slide 20, and I was looking at a copy that I had here. Slide 20 talked to the proposed resources in the pipeline of 20. I'll just say approximately 25 million megawatts in the pipeline for that are proposed. And then I went back to an earlier slide. Here you have to go back. An earlier slide with regards to maybe the average consumption or the production, which is in the neighborhood of about 34,000 megawatts. Did I read that right?
Well, Senator, I'm looking at slide 20, which does show the 24,000 megawatts of what's proposed for new generation in the system. Yep. So that changes continuously, but this is kind of the current trajectory.
And if I look at, sorry, I was wrong on my number, slide number 8, we currently have a generating capacity of, right here, of 31,500 megawatts.
Right. So Kerry had made the observation that what's in the queue will not all get built. Some of this is a bit speculative.
I understand. I'm just calling it out from the perspective of, and the 24,000 is here as well. So I always like when one number ties out to another. So Kerry, thank you very much for making the numbers consistent. If they were wrong, that's good. But as long as consistent, but they are correct, I believe. I have no reason to believe that they're not correct. That's almost 75% of, and I realize they're all built. Let's see, 50% does, potentially 50%. Or Kerry, let me ask you more specifically, based on your history, or based on your experience, and realize this might be a gray area from a renewable perspective, but they're coming online. Of the 24,000, and you indicated they may not all not come online, might you believe 75% will come to fruition? Or 50? What number would you estimate? I'm not going to hold you to it, so I'm going to write it down.
I don't want to put a number on that, Senator, only because we don't have a practice of doing any forecasting around this. We can look at attrition numbers over time, which have been in the range of 60%, but that's when most of the proposals were gas-fired generation. You know, there's a lot of steps a generator has to go through to come online beyond the ISO study process. They need to get state permits, federal permits, they need state citing approval, and they need to get financing. So it might be that it's simply the best positioned resource or one that picks, the ideal spot on the transmission system that ultimately goes forward. But there are lots of renewable resources competing to provide this energy in the future.
Okay, if we can go back to slide 20 just for a quick second. And then I want to tie in the governor's executive order that I think Senator Rhode talked about earlier, and I mentioned earlier. So, from a desire to, and a goal of transitioning to renewables from fossil fuel generation of electricity, and I look at the governor's executive order, and I'm trying to work a couple of screens here at the same time, that was put out not quite a year ago, January 17th of this year. We'll make sure everybody gets a copy. Press release, Raimondo sets goal of 100% renewable electricity by 2030. So goals are great, but we need to have plans, projects align potentially with plans. So it gives some promise of looking at what's being looked at here. And I realize that this is potentially new territory. And clearly, Kerry, as you indicated, while I'm excited about a lot of this, I'm very excited about the battery storage. And at the end of the day, the ability to get it with renewables and be able to store that in a very efficient and effective manner, and efficient meaning smaller space than larger space, will be a critical area as we go forward, regardless of where the energy is coming from. If there's a way to store that energy as opposed to being lost. So thank you in that regard. The one thing I do want to point out to folks, which I'm excited about as well, and I'll mention it now, all the reports that Eric and Carrie spoke about are linkable. So if you go to the specific one, if we go to slide 27 for a second, you'll see in the bottom here, I look at this report on a very regular basis. That's selectable on the bottom. The link is there. And then if we move to, sorry. I'm just looking for the other, we can pull it down. We have the 3 other reports as well. Those are also selectable and will be available for commission members. And on page 34, thank you very much. When you hover over the title of the document, you'll be able to select it from the PDF file. So in addition to having the app, as Senator Royer said, being able to reference these documents are critical as well. We'll talk about something in the way forward in a minute. So Eric, if we go back to the reliability piece, and this is my last question for now, and I'm going to move on to other committee members. Slide number 4. I'm excited to see on the chart here, I believe this is what you talked about aligns with this, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. Do they put out a regular report? Is that report available?
Yes, NERC produces a number of assessments. They do seasonal assessments for winter and the summer period. And if you go to the NERC website, most of their reports, unless there's any information that's critical energy infrastructure information that's restricted, you can see a lot of their reporting available right on their website.
So commission members will get that. We'll get that to you as well. The NERC link, and we'll see. So Eric and Carrie, this specific question, last question I have for now anyway, has to do with. So we talked about reliability of generation. Underlying all that is the ensuring that energy that gets generated gets transmitted and distributed to the end users. Also, reliability and resilience from the perspective of malfunction. Should a malfunction occur? Malfunctions always occur by the very nature of using mechanical, electrical equipment and software. Things happen. We can always go for what we believe and know about and test for what we believe and know about, but things happen from that perspective. And I know Director Kumar is here. The area I want to go to is an area, and I'm not going to ask you to talk about the specifics of it, but I ask you to speak about it in general terms. The cybersecurity side of things. We're all aware and familiar of what's happened recently. I'm not going to go into any details at the national level with things from the cyber breach perspective, hacking, et cetera, solar winds, amongst other things. Could you just talk to, in general terms, like I said, I'm asking you to talk about the cyber vulnerabilities, because that would be inappropriate, either in a closed or open section for that matter. Well, how are we ensuring that from a ISO perspective, or what role does the ISO have from a cybersecurity perspective as it relates to the grid?
Well, we have a direct role, and it's actually a very important question, and it's a major focus of the organization. So I'll give you an analogy. If you were to drive to the ISO and come up to the perimeter of the facility, you would encounter a security guard, and then there's a couple of checkpoints before you could get into the building. That's the physical perimeter security around the building. We have a cyber perimeter around the building as well. So as an employee, you don't have internet access to our network directly. You always go through a virtual private network. As employees, we go through regular mandatory training that talks about the ways that bad actors are trying to penetrate our systems and use social engineering to trick people into clicking on links or using a flash drive or thinking that an important time-sensitive email is coming from the CEO when it's really not. So there's a lot of training that goes into the entire workforce, making sure that we are reducing those risks. We also do a number of exercises. We do one every 2 years. It's called GridX. It's run by NERC. We are a major participant in that, and it's a simulation of both physical and cyber attacks on the system. We do that in a simulation environment, so it's not happening in the actual control center, but in a replica of that building. And it's designed to test all of our operating procedures and business processes, as well as our communications. And what happens throughout the exercise is you lose functionality, and you have to continue to be able to keep the lights on and communicate externally. So that's probably one of the best tools that we have to test ourselves and look at the lessons learned. It's a long couple days, I'll tell you that. It requires a lot of planning and reflection after the fact, but we certainly take that very seriously. And there are also SIP critical infrastructure protection standards that apply to the ISO, which are set by the federal entities. So cybersecurity is a very important consideration. We always want to be mindful of not putting a kind of a blueprint in the public domain that talks about here are the vulnerabilities in the system, certainly, but we work very closely with the transmission owners and all of the utilities that are tied into the system. I guess a bit of a safeguard is that the brains of the operation, the system that actually runs the grid, is not hosted in the World Wide Web. It's not on the internet. It's a closed system, and any employee who needs to get into the control room or into a system that is a cyber asset needs special clearance. So just because you're a member of the ISO workforce doesn't mean you have badge access or credentials to log into parts of the network that are more secure from a cyber security perspective. So there's lots of ways that we protect things from coming into the building, and then once you're in the building, protecting to make sure that people don't have access to things that are not part of their job description.